very good jobs at planning for their future, planning for their retirement. And so that's what we're going to talk about here a little bit today, is just some of the common things that we see in retirement planning, and in particular retirement planning, because I think for a lot of people, that for we'll say the 92% of the people out there that are employed, probably one of their biggest issues is being able to plan for retirement, and it's how do they do that? So basically what I was going to do is I was going to spend a little bit of time going through, just three real basic areas, and those are common mistakes that people make pre-retirement, fears that people have when they actually do retire, because believe it or not, when people get to that point down the road, they do have a lot of fears about actually pulling the trigger.
Well, sure, when you're cashing in your chips, I mean, you don't get to go back to the table.
Absolutely. And so we have a lot of conversations with folks around that. And then I was going to talk a little bit about some of the common mistakes that retirees actually make when they are retired, because believe it or not, we see mistakes made there too.
So what are some of those, we can just take this in chronological order. I mean, what are the biggest mistakes people make before they retire?
Well, there's always the basics. I mean, this is nothing new. They don't save enough. They start saving too late. And then they make bad investment decisions. But I think that, overriding all of this, quite frankly, is most people do not take the time to build a plan for themselves. And whether that's talking to a certified financial planner, whether that's going online and doing something themselves, they just don't take the time. And it's not just about retirement planning, but it's also about the liability side. So it's talking to folks like you as well, and kind of getting an idea of what should we be doing for our liability management. Talking to folks like us, what should we be doing on the investment management side. So overriding all of this, I would say the financial plan is probably one of the biggest steps or best tools that somebody can use to actually begin taking the right steps for their retirement planning.
Well, and I think a big key point that you're making is, whether it's someone on your side managing their assets, somebody on a mortgage side helping them manage their debt, whatever it may be, it is almost impossible, unless you are in the world of finance, to manage all of it effectively. I think there is too much going on, and people are just busy to take that role on themselves.
I think you're right, and I think that is the biggest hurdle for most people in taking on some of these things. It absolutely is the biggest hurdle, and I've said it probably 25 times. People spend more time planning for their vacation than they do for their retirement, and that's an old axiom, but it is very true. People just don't take the time to actually plan.
Why is that, do you think? I mean, they want to go to the beach. They want to go take a vacation to Hawaii. They also want to retire. So as opposed to planning their perpetual long vacation, they just go week by week.
Because it means facing reality. I think that's the real answer. Because if you face reality, you might realize you can't go to the beach on the next vacation because you don't have enough money.
Touche, Brett. We're here with Brett Williams, Vice President of Investments with the Williams Adams Group from UBS Financial. You also talked about starting saving too late. I know everybody who watches a little bit of television sees the, hey, we might not make it commercial. Mm-hmm. What are we doing? And then, of course, there's a silver bullet that just solves all their problems with a phone call.
Right.
That's not really true, is it?
Not at all, no. My own viewpoint on this is, people say it's never too late to start saving. I think that's an overused cliche. But my point is, if a person's made the mistake of not saving, don't compound that mistake even further by putting that decision off even longer, because you'll just make a bad decision, that much of a worse decision.
And then I guess by starting the plan, you also have the ability to maybe start making some different life choices.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's, hey, you know what? We are going to end up moving to a much less expensive community. Mm-hmm. We're probably not going to be able to remain in Seattle.
Correct.
Or, we're going to be east of the mountains, or we're going to be in Detroit downtown with a $4,000 house.
Right. And,
that's where everybody wants to retire, is downtown Detroit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, right. Can't wait to go.
Yeah.
No, I think that that gets right back to our opening statement, which is, having that financial plan. Because if you can begin to realize that, hey, we may need to take this step or that step to get to where we need to be, even if those aren't our favorite steps to take, at least we know what we need to do so that we know we can get to where we want to, hopefully get to.
Do you see that people get more motivated to reach their goal if they just start with some sort of plan?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
And I mean, and then you talked about maybe bad investments, but it kind of allows you to stomach some of those investments if you know. Okay, well.
Yeah. I was going to say I put bad investments on there or bad investment decisions. It's not, and I want to make very clear for a lot of people. It's not so much that people make bad investments. In other words, they pick this mutual fund over that mutual fund or this stock over that stock. It's generally not a bad decision. What people have is bad investment behavior. That's the biggest thing to I think for people to take away from this. It's, oh my gosh, the markets are down, I need to sell. Oh my, markets are up, I just missed out, so now I'm going to buy. It's this rear view mirror.
Apple is probably going to own everything in the entire world at its current pace. Let's make sure we get in.
Exactly. So those are the kind of thought processes that people go through, which has the potential to lend to I would say to poor investment decisions.
Because in some ways, I think what I hear you saying is the stock market almost markets itself. When it's doing well, everybody wants in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, It's like a snowball effect,
right? And generally speaking, when the stock market's cheap, nobody wants to buy it. But Nordstrom's has their half yearly sale. Everybody goes down to buy the cheap clothes when they get cheap. But the stock market goes on sale, and people are, nope, I got to wait till it gets more expensive, and then they go and buy. So that's sort of a function of bad investment behavior.
Okay, I think that's a key distinction between bad investment decisions, because you think, well, I didn't buy the right piece, but maybe it's not necessarily when you bought it; it might be when you sold it.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Yep.
So what are some of the other big fears that people have? Because if somebody's going to go open their finances to somebody like you,
mm-hmm.
There's certainly going to be some fears they have.
Right. Well, I think I think the main fears that people have are running out of money. I mean, that's always, and I think that's an obvious fear that when you're working for a company and you've been receiving a paycheck and you go through the financial planning process and you realize in going through that process that, yes, not only do I have enough money to live the lifestyle I want to live for the remainder of my life, but I probably have much more than I'll need them and have a lot of money to leave to my kids. Still, people have fears of losing that paycheck because now you are dependent upon this intangible thing that's out there, meaning your 401ks, your investment accounts, or whatever. But now you have to count on that for your monthly check instead of actually doing something, doing some activity or working to actually. So there's sort of a primal fear there that a lot of people have of.
Well, they've never really seen the money.
Right.
They've never actually.
Yep.
I mean, it's a number on a statement that changes every month when you get your statement, but they haven't touched it or felt it. You almost don't know if it works. I could see that,
Right.
I don't know. I never tried to use that money. I've always had this money over here.
And you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what sort of the thought process that goes through people's heads.
So then, what do you do to help them kind of get through that?
Well, it's a lot of meetings, especially as somebody gets near retirement. It's just a lot of it's a lot of meetings because it's really about giving people a very clear understanding of what they have, what sort of cash flow their portfolios are going to generate, and just giving them that clear that clear understanding and just helping them to helping educate and helping them learn exactly what it is that's going to be driving their income. And the more people can understand about that, the more comfortable they are actually making that leap into retirement.
So do you think that fear then is conquered through a relationship with somebody who they can trust? I mean, it's got to be a big piece of it.
It can be. I will say this. There are a lot of people out there that are very comfortable doing it themselves. And I would say for those folks that are doing it themselves and can, sort of unemotionally, if you will, manage their money, great. More power to them. I would say there's also a lot of people out there that really do need the help because, quite frankly, a lot of people don't have an interest in watching their money, watching their investments, making the day-to-day decisions. That's just, some people do, some people don't. And so for those people that don't, working with a certified financial planner or an advisor can be a good, is usually a good solution for them.
We're here with Brett Williams, CFP and Vice President of Investments with the Williams Adams Group. And so, Brett, we just have a few minutes before we have to go to break. So once you get over that hump, you've decided you're going to retire. You've taken the steps to realize that the money that's sitting in an account is actually usable. It creates stuff, right? I mean, you can buy things with it, spend it. It doesn't just sit in an account. Then what are some of those big mistakes that a retiree then makes in retirement? Because that point in time, like there's some real safety rails you better stay on.
Right, and I think there's two, there's really two big risks that we see. One is emotional, and one is financial. The emotional one, and this is where we kind of have sometimes have to put on our counselor caps, if you will. But one of the big things that we encourage our retired clients to do is to stay active. I can't emphasize how important that is. Throughout my years in this business, I've seen folks who retire that then go on to kind of lead, not as active lives, more docile, just not engaging in life as much. And they oftentimes don't do as well in retirement. And, when people stay busy, they stay engaged, and not just with friends, but also whether it's volunteering, doing activities such as that, working a little bit here and there, but staying engaged in life, if you will, I think is from an emotional perspective is one of the best things that a retiree can do. On the financial side, the biggest risk that we see to retirees, and this has been a big risk in the past and will probably rear itself again in the future, but is protecting themselves against inflation. Today, in today's world, we're in a relatively low inflationary environment. Yet if you talk to any of my clients, they'll tell you that their inflation rates are much higher than what the government is saying in their CPI reports, because they have things like healthcare, taxes, all that kind of stuff that tends to go up faster than the rate of inflation. The other thing that we see as a potential risk down the road is that if and when inflation does begin to really rear its head, and at some point it likely will, if we're at 2.5% inflation today, but that doubles to 5% at some point down the road, it's going to double their cost of living in a relatively short period of time. And so that's the financial risk that we see that I don't think a lot of people recognize at this point.
Well, Brett, the people who will be able to afford it are those CEOs I was talking about earlier. And
I think so.
I tend to think a lot of that money being sucked out of the economy is what will actually keep inflation down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because people can't afford it.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. Businesses can't charge that much.
Yep, until we start seeing some of that money, like you said, come back to other people, then that could be the case.
Unless he's going to spend $126 million next year, I'm sure that'll just trickle into all pieces. Anyways, hey Brett, thanks so much for joining us. We do have to go to break. Hey, when we come back, Ryan Leopold's going to join us again on the mic. We're going to more about the CEOs and the banks and the discrepancies that are out there. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Brashenomics.